disclose on it.
Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for July 23rd, 2019. This meeting is called to order.
Closed session agenda, public employee employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, County Building Official Board Action.
Any public comment? Seeing none, Supervisor Mills.
Chair, I'd like to disclose that I do have an acquaintance or relationship with the applicant at this meeting, not that it will conflict in any way with my decision.
Thank you very much.
Item number 2, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, closed session with county designated labor negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association.
Any public comment? Seeing none.
Item number 3, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4.
Public comment? Seeing none, we will move to closed session. Thank you. We'll return at 9:30. Good morning and welcome back to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for July 23rd, 2019. If you are able, will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Tofinelli, will you please lead us this morning?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will report out on closed session after public comments. So are there any announcements from the board? Staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to recognitions and acknowledgments.
Clerk of the Board of Supervisors adopt a proclamation recognizing August 2019 as Child Support Awareness Month in Calaveras County.
Supervisor Tofinelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to read this proclamation. I am chair of the Central Sierra Child Support Agency. And I see we have staff here this morning. This is a proclamation recognizing August 2019 as Child Support Awareness Month in Calaveras County. Whereas the vision of Central Sierra Child Support Agency is partnering with families to create self-sufficiency, and whereas the professional staff of the Central Sierra Child Support Agency work diligently to fulfill this vision by partnering with families involved in more than 100 cases and collecting over $11 million in support last federal fiscal year. And we're pretty much on line this year to collect close to a little bit over $11 million. I think we had a discussion yesterday at our meeting on that. Whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency declares its commitment to having a meaningful impact on the families it serves, and whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency is engaged in educating its customers regarding their cases and the community regarding the services it provides, and whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency affirms the important role it plays in partnering with parents to support the well-being of children, and whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency encourages parents to be accountable for their children, providing them with many opportunities to succeed. And whereas Child Support Awareness Month recognizes and acknowledges parents who work diligently to support their children to provide both emotional and financial stability, thus having a positive impact on their children. And whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency thanks its partner agencies and recognizes its child support professionals who strive to continuously improve their customer service and make a difference in the lives of the children in our community. And with that, I'd like to call Julie up if you have a few words to say.
Good morning, Board. My name is Julie Prado. I'm the Executive Director of the Child Support Agency. I have Leanne Platt, the Deputy Director, here with me today. And thank you for taking the time to recognize our agency and the 36 staff members that we have that work diligently each and every month to fulfill our vision. August is nationally recognized as Child Support Awareness Month, and California is recognizing it this year with a theme that is, "You are there for them, we'll be there for you." I wanted to point out for you that we have just over 5,000 cases in our agency. We are a JPA model serving the counties of Alpine, Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne. Just over 2,000 of those children that we serve reside right here in Calaveras County. We are on track to collect $11.8 million this year. Over $3.5 million will go to the families and children right here in Calaveras County. We are an agency that not only provides child support services, but we can assist in establishing parentage, establishing medical support orders, and collecting on those orders. We're also diligently looking to connect families with services here in our community and those surrounding us. So I wanted to not only bring recognition to the program, because we're always looking to serve families. We know there are more than 2,000 children in this county that need our help, and we want to spread the word by using this opportunity. But I also think it's important that you all understand the hard work that goes into this and the work that our staff do each and every day. They're passionate about child support. They're passionate about the families in this community, and they will appreciate your recognition today. So thank you.
And Julia, we're in the top 5 of...
Thank you, Marita. We're actually, we're going back and forth between 4 and 5 out of 49 agencies in California. There are a couple like ours that are regional. We're the only JPA in the state, but there are others that join forces to work together, and we're ranked solidly 5 or 6 throughout the state. And I also want to recognize Kristen for her support with our agency. We partner together. She actually houses our staff here in this county, so we are working locally here with some of your other agencies. And we're very proud of the work that we do and the results that our staff give us day in and day out.
One of the best run organizations that I'm involved in. It's done very well, and thank you for becoming our chief officer there.
Thank you.
I'd like to move this item.
You would like to move this item?
I would.
Is
We
there
need public comment.
We will do, let me get a second, and then we'll do public comment.
I will second.
Motion by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Toffenali. Is there public comment on this item? Seeing none, I would like to call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Please let me also recognize Supervisor Toffenali and Supervisor Callaway for your support and your leadership with our agency. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. You want to come on up and get your...
Well, let me finish reading the proclamation. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors, County of Calaveras, State of California, does hereby designate the month of August 2019 to be declared Child Support Awareness Month in Calaveras County, and applauds the Central Sierra Child Support Agency for its continued service to the families throughout our community. And with that, you both want to come on up here?
Where do these pictures go? On what? Oh.
Thank you very much. We will move on to public comment.
Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Thank you very much. Carl, you may begin.
Hello. So you have Coca-Cola today. Early Christmas for you folks. It's just going to be hot, be really hot. This time of the year, I get excited because the Tour de France is on, and they're having a heat issue. It looks like Paris is going to be 109 on Thursday. Those folks don't have air conditioning. It's just not tradition for them to have it. And but they'll be in the Alps by that time, they'll be in the Alps by that time, and be a little cooler for them. But still, it's going to be hot for those folks. I want to talk a little bit about this this kind of habit you've got into, Chair, of stating people's names when they come to the podium. If you look at the Brown Act, it specifically says that you can't require somebody to sign in or state their name. And the spirit of the Brown Act, you shouldn't be saying people's names because some people want to be anonymous. I want to be anonymous. I don't want people out there knowing who the heck I am when I have things to say at times. Because some of the things, aren't that flattering to the board, like what I just mentioned right there. So always adhere to the spirit of the Brown Act. It might not, it might not fall that that you're specifically violating a portion of it in words, but in spirit you may be. All right? I guess it's not all right, no response on that one. I do appreciate you folks. I do appreciate the heat you take. I do appreciate that you have to make decisions that are tough at times. But one thing I don't appreciate is when you inadvertently have substantive conversations that are not agendized. And the reason is, I might have something I want to say about that. I might want to voice in. And other people might just miss it. That something might happen in a meeting that is potentially a violation of the Brown Act. So just stick to the rules, stick to the agenda, keep things moving along. Don't do anything that might jeopardize my respect for you. Now, my time is almost up here, and I want you to have a wonderful day. I assume that you're going to be talking, maybe have an announcement to make during after public comment. Good day. Take care. Stay cool.
Hello, my name is Virginia Franklin. I live in District 2. I have a small ranch. I run a handful of sheep, some cows, some donkeys. Several years ago, I got caught up in the cannabis scam. I had just gone through a double mastectomy. The county announced their program. I went ahead and made an application, not really wanting to, but the county stated, if you don't make this application today, you'll never be in this, participate in this in the future. 30 days, within 30 days, I decided I didn't want to be involved in it. There were too many criminals involved. I came down to the planning department. I withdrew my application. They refused to accept that. There were some guys growing on my property that I had removed. Josh Crabtree wrote a letter to the planning department stating that the place was abated, that I had voluntarily done this. They still would not accept the withdrawal. So since then, I have been fighting and fighting to have the record reflect that on August 5th, 2016, I went into the planning department with a document saying, I want this thing shut down, and they told me, no, you don't have the right to do that because these guys who are on your property do. I've owned my property for 40 years. I've been a participating citizen, maybe flying under the radar. I helped develop the Women's Crisis Center. I'm currently a senior peer advocate with the Mental Health Department. I don't want this misinformation that has come back to bite me 1,000 times because the record does not reflect the truth. I've filed a court case, which was thrown out because they said I didn't have the administrative process. I went timely. I went to the planning department and asked for a hearing 3 times in public at a hearing, speaking like this. I've come here. Mike Oliveira told me, get a lawyer. I have a lawyer. These lawyers that we pay for should be looking at this evidence and saying, oh yeah, there is a mistake here. This does need to be rectified in some way. These department heads have just been given the opportunity to run rampant right over the top of people. They tried to stick me with a $44,000 tax bill, which I'm not
Ms.
paying.
Franklin, thank you very much.
For listening.
Ms. Newman?
Venceremos, venceremos, venceremos algún día. Hondo en mi corazón, ya yo creo que nosotros venceremos algún día. Okay, for all you gringos, you know the tune, you know the words. Let's sing it in English. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Hoy yo tengo la mostrar que honor y respeto a los niños en la frontera, los niños que están separados de las madres y los padres por la crueldad de nuestro gobierno. Yo canto esta canción por la seguridad y la liberación. Déjame gente pasar, déjenos gente pasar. Today I intend to show my honor and respect for the children at the border, the children who are separated from their mothers and fathers because of the cruelty of our government. I sing this song for their safety and their freedom. Let my people go. Let our people go. Now, I know this probably isn't going to happen as long as we have a racist in the White House. So it's very important that we do something about that. I've spoke about this before, and it seems to be getting worse. I wonder how long it will take before the people who are truly God's chosen people are finally given their freedom, their day in court, and their opportunity to seek a safe and healthy lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Before we move on to the consent agenda, I would like to report out on closed session.
Item number 1, public employee employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, county building official. The board was polled and directed staff to extend a conditional offer to the successful candidate upon acceptance and completion of the background. A resolution will be brought forward for an action to appoint the candidate at a future meeting. Item number 2, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, closed session with county designated labor negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association. Board action, no reportable action taken. Item number 3, conference with legal counsel and anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D4. No reportable action was taken.
Thank you very much. Move on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Are there any board members who wish to remove an item? Members of the public? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll move this, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Supervisor Toffenelli. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Regular agenda.
Only because Sergeant Whiting was here did I support that.
Item number 22, Health and Human Services Agency. Approve utilization of a portion of Government Center property located between the Behavioral Health Clinic and the library at 891 Mountain Ranch Road for the purpose of operating as one of two sites, the other in West Point, in the Scattered Site Emergency Shelter Pilot Project.
Kristen.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Kristen Stranger, Health and Human Services. The item before you today is another step in a process that we've brought to your board a multitude of times over the past year and a half or so. So as you know, the Homeless Task Force is a diverse group of representatives throughout our community. It's composed of county, faith-based, community-based, local law enforcement, Office of Education, city partners, community members, Forest Service, just a lot of a very diverse representation. And that group really focuses on evaluating existing resources and then making recommendations on different types of ways to address the needs of our residents that lack stable housing throughout our community. As you know, there's been a number of financial resources that have been made available over the past year and a half or so, starting with the Brown administration, to address the various needs of not only those that are actually homeless, but all the way through addressing workforce housing needs and everything in between. So the item before you today is another step in that. As I mentioned, just a little bit of history. In December of 2018, the Homeless Task Force presented an informational item that spoke about the various needs throughout the continuum, everything from prevention to emergency to transitional, permanent supportive housing, workforce housing, and everything in between. So during that item, we had made the board informed about the fact that we were going to be pursuing a state grant opportunity through the Homeless Emergency Aid Program. That was to address emergency shelter needs. We were successful with our Continuum of Care Partners, which is a 4-county consortium. And then we brought to your board in March of 2012 the item that allowed us to engage into a contract with ATCA, the Amador Tuolumne Community Action Agency, which is our lead representative. And that item made the funding available for the pursuit of our Scattered Site Emergency Shelter Project. Then we brought to your board in May of 2018 a resolution. Not only, well, we began with an update from the Homeless Task Force, but then a resolution that declared a shelter crisis for our county that allowed us to engage in many of these funding opportunities. And then you directed us to initiate a zoning amendment for our Scattered Site Emergency Shelter Project, which is the goal is to implement both in West Point with our Blue Mountain partners, and then also here in San Andreas on the county government site. I just wanted to remind the board what this project looks like. You know, I really have to give a lot of kudos to the county partners and as well as the task force who have been just really great about providing insight and information about how this project could work for our community. It is different. It's different than what a lot of jurisdictions are doing. It's much smaller in scale. It's very targeted. The project itself the proposal is to procure approximately 10 individual units that would be complete with shower, bathroom facilities, and a small sink. And we will utilize those in a scattered site emergency model. There will be intensive case management provided by our community partners. We have a full evaluation that we've engaged in of the pilot itself. We have talked with other jurisdictions who have implemented similar models, and we wanted to also We've reviewed the housing element. Many of what things that we're proposing are within line of the housing element. And again, really want to emphasize the point that this is a pilot project. We know this is going to be a learning experience. We know that other jurisdictions are much further along in terms of addressing emergency needs, but we're confident that this well-developed, collaboratively developed pilot could be something that would be really beneficial to our community. And so with that, I can take any questions on the pilot or anything associated with it.
Supervisor Mills, would you like to start?
Yes, so these, thank you for bringing this forward, Kristen, and I know this is a continuing discussion. These tiny homes would be considered substandard housing for the purpose of building codes, am I correct?
So not substandard. With the scattered site emergency shelter the emergency shelter declaration does give the jurisdictions the ability to do to address emergency needs for sheltering, right? That was more along the lines for those communities that are doing things like tent cities, which are happening in various communities. We're not proposing that. The model that we are proposing is actually to procure housing and community development, so HCD approved, state approved units that meet standards for manufactured housing. So we've worked with the building department in the development of our invitation to bid that we will release once we're complete with it. So we're not going to really be utilizing or needing to utilize the elements of that emergency shelter declaration, which does allow us to do very, very minimal building standards. The model we're proposing really is a higher level.
So when we get down to the final numbers, I'm going to be very curious to see what the cost per foot is or the cost per unit is, so we can kind of understand what this is going to be, plus the ongoing maintenance or care costs that would be involved, because this is not going to be just an issue of put them on the ground and then walk away. There's going to be a lot of partners that are going to have to continue to maintain them or to keep them in a functional or livable condition, especially being so close to the campus as it would be. That's going to be really a critical element, that they don't deteriorate and turn into an eyesore. So, we're taking on this challenge, but it's an ongoing commitment we're going to be having to take care of year over year. And I just want everybody to really understand it's going to be important to keep those maintained through the entire process.
Exactly. And I will tell you, given what the proposal that we're proposing, because we're not doing a very large shelter, we're being responsive to our community, which is we've researched and done and looked around and done community needs assessments on a multitude of things. Our community members don't live in one specific section. We don't have a city center, right? We have very distinct communities, so we're being responsive to that when we are proposing and implementing various strategies throughout our homelessness plan that we have that's on a much larger scale and has a different strategies. This is one strategy. I can assure you that the cost per foot for what we're proposing for the emergency shelter will be much higher than what you might see at other communities, because we're talking about fully contained units. We're talking about individual or a couple in specific cases. That being said, the logistics group, which we have going with the CAO's office and building and such, we are being very mindful of a plan that we will be, when we do release an invitation for bid, and then there's a subsequent purchase order and such, we'll bring that to your board, and we will be mindful about responding to ongoing maintenance questions and our plan for addressing that.
Now, these are numbers that are going to be developed over time. I don't expect you to have it all right now. Has there been any conversation with the City of Angels Camp as to whether or not they might be partners, considering how much of a hub they are along the Highway 4 corridor, and they do have a homeless issue? Have we reached out to them at all?
So our task force does have representation from the city. Not everybody can come every time because it's a monthly meeting, but we do send and invite them, the city as well as the chief of police there, and the fairgrounds have been an active partner since the beginning too. They've been partners in it. So far, these funding opportunities are coming kind of one at a time, and we're being responsive to them when they come. So we have engaged them on a policy-wide level. We haven't engaged them directly in terms of specific financial contributions or of any sort for this particular project. And on a broader scale, they have been very active partners. That's where Sierra Hope, which is one of our active community partners, the group that we intend to work with to oversee this, is stationed. And I know that they have the Habitat for Humanity group there, and there is a recent transitional house that was opened there, approved by their city council and such, for serving women with children in a transitional supportive environment. So they very much are an active partner in the bigger discussion. In this particular project, no, the two pilot sites right now are West Point and San Andreas. that we're
I'll be
proposing.
meeting with them this Friday. I'm going to probably add this into the conversation to just kind of maybe push them along a little bit further as to what their commitments are and what their goals would be, because they do have a homeless issue there.
Yeah.
And I just want to see that they're a participant if they can be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Callaway?
I need to really thank you and the task force. It's been very embarrassing as a county to not have anything, to have not done anything for all these many years, and the issue's been here. And our adjoining counties have had shelters in place, whatever format that looks like. So I'm really, I don't know, excited isn't the word. I'm really proud of the county and you and your task force for stepping up and providing this needed one. And maybe not all the T's and I's are crossed, but, you know, if we don't do something, shame on us. So I just need to publicly thank you for that.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I think Kristen, you and I have had conversations about this. My question is, though, infrastructure-wise, this whole plan is, you're going to start out with 3 to 6 units, but eventually your hope is to at least have 10 there, is my understanding. When we do the initial infrastructure, are we going to go in and have that done for any future expansions? I'm not sure the landscaping, if there's landscaping involved. This money includes landscaping, paving, or any of that type of stuff that needs to be done once these are put in place.
Okay. So in terms of expansion, so the pilot right now as it's proposed is approximately 10 units county-wide, meaning 3 to 6 here in San Andreas, 3 to 6 up in West Point, depending on how everything pencils out. Again, a lot of this is has to remain flexible, as Supervisor Callaway was just pointing to, because we don't know what the individual units will end up coming back at, right? We have this one-time money made available to the state to procure these units. We know through reading updates through CSAC and various, and being mindful and listening to what the governor's proposing, there's a lot of resources being made available to local jurisdictions at a state level. We don't know how all of those are going to look yet, right? But we know that they're coming. We only know the ones that are here right now. So right now, the proposal as it stands is approximately 10 units. We have not discussed as a task force in terms of increasing that number of units. What we have discussed is the model itself is seeped in having either a community-based organization or a faith-based organization be the land by which these units will be, and that was the original proposal. We've had to modify that slightly because so far the only community-based organization that had the capacity to pilot this with us was the Blue Mountain group up in West Point. But the intention is to eventually see if there's as we do the evaluation and our partners become more comfortable with this, be able to relocate the units to potentially a church up in a different community, and kind of they're mobile units. Like, yes, they are on the ground, but they have the ability to be moved and be responsive to our community needs where they're needed. So long story short, we haven't spoken about expanding the number of units themselves. With our recent point in time count, our proposal right now is to really serve the individuals that come in, really help them to make a concerted change within their lives and to get back on track and move towards self-sufficiency and just kind of keep it going. This isn't the only resource that is used to meet emergency need. There are other programs and services that do have elements of addressing emergency services. Our CalWorks housing support program provides very similar through a hotel type of situation. But that is one thing that the proposal is right now. If more funding comes up and if your board would like us to continue to move forward, or the task force makes a recommendation, or the pilot's extremely successful, we'll have those conversations about expansion then. The funding source itself is extremely flexible in terms of what it can pay for rolling out the project. It kind of has been, the direction has been whatever you need to make it happen. So to answer your question about if the funding can be utilized for site development and things like that, landscaping or what have you, the answer is yes.
The one-time funding being brought up, and there are other services. So as we proceed, once that property's there, the one-time money is spent putting these in, what's paying the bills in the future?
So the intention is to, again, it's a little preliminary, but we're paying attention at the state level. There is additional funding coming down. The intention is to continue operation of these services. Again, this will be completely up to your board, but a recommendation that I would likely make is to utilize any specific funding that's there for scattered site, for addressing emergency shelter, because they're kind of coming in pots with different specifications, to continue to fund the services contract and ongoing maintenance of the pilot that we are pursuing, assuming that it is going to be successful. So that's kind of the longer term plan. And then anything beyond, I mean, that takes us through quite a few years. Again, that kind of goes back to Supervisor Mills's questions on ongoing maintenance and such. We'll have to have those conversations at a later time.
And one other thing I had talked to you just prior to the meeting is there's a misconception in the community on a lot of these issues, and they're confused what's getting put where and everything. How are we going to possibly work on more community outreach and education throughout this process?
Yes.
Possibly through the task force.
Yes, yes, that's a wonderful question. So yes, we do intend to have various community meetings. We've had the ongoing task force, which does have community representatives, interested partners are welcome to the table. I could tell you that primarily it's the faith-based and community-based organizations and such that do show up. But yes, we intend to do additional education throughout the community, just about trauma-informed care and mental illness and just the general things that we do. We've had for years various community education opportunities through our Mental Health Services Act funding and things like that. But we do definitely need to ramp that up. We've had conversations with our Stanislaus Housing Authority about how we could do that in partnership too, since they are our county's housing authority. So yes, your message is very well heard, and we will continue to increase the amount of community input and community forums where we can dialogue further about those needs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My apologies, Susan. I just called for public comment. There was no public comment available. I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or a motion.
I'll move this item.
Is moved by Supervisor Callaway. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Item number 23, Public Works, authorize the board chair to execute an agreement with the Gordian Group Incorporated for the provision of job order contracting services in an amount not to exceed $600,000 for the 3-year period of July 24th, 2019 through June 30th, 2022.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pack, do you need a couple seconds to set up? Take a 5-minute, we're going to give you a 5-minute break. Thank you. Item 23.
Item number 23, Public Works, authorize the board chair to execute an agreement with the Gordian Group Incorporated for the provision of job order contracting services in an amount not to exceed $600,000 for the 3-year period of July 24th, 2019 through June 30th, 2022.
Mr. Pack.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Garamendi, members of the board. My name is Joshua Pack. I'm your Director of Public Works. I'm here today to introduce to you job order contracting, what we think is a potential for an exciting and new alternative project delivery method. Before I get started, I do want to have a side note. I have a new member of staff here, and I want to introduce her to you. So she doesn't know I'm doing this. This is the quickest way to lose staff. But Chantel Garvin is our new Public Works Analyst, too. She comes to us with a background in water and a little bit on the environmental side, but a really talented background. She's passed her preliminary engineering exam and hopes to take the subsequent exams here shortly. Really excited to have her. We have some new blood in Public Works, a lot of new faces, and we're just really excited about them. So again, anytime I have an opportunity to embarrass a member of my staff, I'm more than happy to do it. So really excited to have her on board.
Welcome aboard.
So today, to go back to job order contracting, the action item we're asking you to take today is to approve an agreement with the Gordian Group for job order contracting services. We're asking for a maximum amount not to exceed $600,000, and the contract terms would start tomorrow and run through June 30th of 2022. Now, before we talk about the specific contract, I want to talk about history of public contracting and job order contracting in general. Early history, agencies for many years did some direct negotiations. Things were done quickly, they were done efficiently, pretty loosely, and so over time, and rightfully so, the state and local agencies have adopted more regulation and standards for the procurement of services using public dollars. That culminated in 1981 with the adoption of the Public Contract Code. Since that time, it has grown and expanded. And while that code provides a lot of regulation, a lot of direction for agencies, it also really limits our flexibility. And one of the key ways in which it limits our flexibility is the burden that it places on local agencies relative to the project size, as well as the size of the agency itself. Whether the project is $20,000 or $20 million, a lot of the procedural processes involved with the Public Contract Code apply to both sizes. So for smaller counties, rural counties like us, who try to deliver a lot of really small and moderate size, pretty easy repetitive projects, the formalization of that kind of bogs down the process. It makes things a little more difficult to deliver. And then looking here locally at Calaveras, things that you're familiar with, some of our staffing challenges and staffing turnover also affect our ability to really push things quickly and expediently. Looking at some of the different options that are available to public and private contractors, there's a lot of different public contracting procedures. Unfortunately, most of those aren't available to public agencies. There are a few that are. The two in red are the ones that we utilize. We use in-house staff for really small projects, things like potholes or a failed small culvert. Design bid build is the standard process that you're familiar with. Agencies have been using that for a really long time, and I'll talk more about that. Job order contracting is approved through the Public Contract Code. It's something we're really excited about and being used by other organizations. Design bid build, it is the process that you've been used to. It's a sequential process. We hire either in-house staff or we hire a consultant to deliver the design plans and specifications. Once those are complete, we bid the project. We have a low bid process. The low bid contractor is identified and delivers the project to the county. It's an accepted and standardized process. The county does benefit from the competition process resulting from low bids. It has a number of disadvantages. There are significant efforts on the administrative side just to be able to go through the formal process, and it is generally accepted as the slowest project delivery process. Looking at Calaveras County and our process, and this is not any different than any other municipality, from the date that we have completed plans and specifications to the date that we put the first shovel in the ground, a typical process for a typical project is about 22 weeks. So a little more than 5 months for us to, when we're ready to go build, to actually go through the procedures and build the project. And for us, when we have a lot of restrictions environmentally and through various permitting agencies that limit us for a 6-month window, usually April 15th to October 15th, it makes a challenge for us to be able to meet your expectations and the community's expectations. So the reason we're bringing job order contracting to you today, why I'm so excited about it, is we think that this has an opportunity to improve our ability to deliver projects countywide, meeting the expectations of the board and the community at large while still satisfying modern public contract code and modern public contract laws. So job order contracting is an alternative to the traditional design bid build process. It works for a lot of projects. The projects tend to be small and medium-sized in nature, things that are repetitive, things like renovations, repairs, routine maintenance projects. We view this as a tool in the toolbox. It's not a tool to replace our traditional processes. It's a tool to be used for those small and moderate projects that need to be delivered quickly, need to be delivered timely. One of the key things, and I'll talk about this in a future slide, is we talk a lot about the opportunity to engage local contractors. And I think this is a tool that really provides an avenue for local contractors to engage with the county and get experience and expertise in the delivery of projects where maybe in the past through the traditional process they didn't have quite as much access. Or maybe just with the bureaucratic way of delivering projects, it was cumbersome and difficult for them to do. This is an approved bidding procedure identified in the Public Contract Code. A lot of agencies use this successfully. I'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. The next couple of slides are my effort to try and define it, because it is a little bit different than what the public's used to. Officially, the official definition is an indefinite delivery and indefinite quantity process. But what we're really doing is, instead of delivering each project formally one by one, we're developing a process in which we enable contractors to deliver a bunch of very small projects with a single bid. We do that bid competitively in accordance with the Public Contract Code. That bid establishes preset prices, and then we move forward with small projects through kind of akin to an on-call construction contract, except the actual prices are pre-approved by the board and pre-agreed to by the contractor. We think this saves time and money. We also think we're doing this and we're not sacrificing our needs for transparency, accountability, and auditability. The contract itself that Gordian will prepare for us is the key to this whole thing. And they create what's called a construction task catalog or unit price book. And that book has thousands, if not tens of thousands, of individual items that could be delivered or asked for by the county from the construction contracting community. Those prices are based on local information, whether it's prevailing wage law, whether it's local materials and equipment costs. So the local community is providing input and feedback on the job order contracting program and what those prices are. Again, another opportunity to collaborate with the construction community here locally. They develop our specifications. We use our standard contract forms, our bid forms, all of our general and specific standard specifications. And then we bid that project. And the contractors bid on that, and then, when they bid on that, they bid on what's called a multiplier. So the contractor will look at this bids, all these prices, and they'll say, I can deliver those for 10% overhead or a 10% markup on those prices. And so they'll bid that way, and we'll identify low bidders based on their markup. So the ones with the lowest markup are identified as the bidders. They've agreed to all these prices with a pre-approved markup, and then we move forward with smaller construction projects with that markup or multiplier. To describe it a little bit differently, in the old way, or the way we currently do things, this is an example. Next year is going to be really busy for Public Works. We have a lot of projects coming down the pipeline. This takes an example of 10 projects. Under the current process that I identified, going through the formal process of approvals, just the processing alone would take more than 4 years. Now, it's not 4 years, but just 4 years of time to get those things ready to construct. What we're doing is we're repackaging and reordering these in a method to now have all 10 of those identified in one bid package. And so you can see right away all those formal processes, all the administrative time to get those prepared for bidding, formal bidding process, going through all that. We are now truncating that into a very small, very digestible piece that saves a lot of time and money. Now, as I mentioned, it's not for everybody. It's not for every project. We have a lot of bigger projects that this is not eligible for. New buildings would be an example. The Wagon Trail project, this would not be applicable to a project like that. New bridges wouldn't be applicable. The traditional process would still be the appropriate one. But this fills that niche for those small, repetitive jobs that don't quite fit under our abilities, but we take a long time because of having to follow the procedures that are in place with the Public Contract Code. So I'm going to give you an example of how it would work here in Calaveras County, and I'm going to pick on Supervisor Calloway's district and the Murphy's Drive project. It's a project that through the 2017 winter storms, the culvert washed away. The county's in the process of identifying a contractor. We hope to bring that to the board in a couple of weeks and build the project here this late summer or early fall. It's been 2.5 years. The public's frustrated. County, I'm personally frustrated and at our ability to, or inability to deliver this project. Theoretically, if we had if we had this happen again, the first step would be to identify the project and then meet with the Gordian Group and contractors out in the field to do a meeting to talk about what we need to do, what are the elements. It's a collaborative process. We all are engaged and invested in the design in the field. Once that happens, then the contractor would issue a proposal. That proposal would use the prices approved by the Board of Supervisors and the contractor. The contractor would then issue a proposal. We would review that with Gordian Group. If there was an iterative process, we'd work through that. Ultimately, we'd issue a job order, and then construction could start. This process, instead of taking months or years through the traditional process, can take weeks or potentially days using job order contracting. San Joaquin County, this is near Supervisor Tofanelli's district. It's on Vallejo Road. Part of Vallejo Road is actually in Calaveras County, but a portion of it goes into San Joaquin County. It's in their maintained mileage. So in the winter storms in early February, the bridge abutments failed and the bridge was closed. And there were residents on that side who had no way in or out. And so San Joaquin had job order contracting with Gordian Group. They were able to do a joint scope meeting on February 13th, 2017. Within 4 days, they had issued a job order and started construction. And within 3.5 months after that, the project was completed. It was done extremely timely, and the project was awarded an award through the American Public Works Association for their efforts. I've talked a little bit about public works. I do want to highlight that this could potentially be a county-wide solution, and it's being set up as such. So in addition to some of the public works projects, a lot of the projects that the board has talked about in recent weeks or months are eligible for job order contracting. Things like roofing remodels or minor remodels here on campus, HVAC, electrical work, those are all things that are right in the wheelhouse of job order contracting. Essentially, any county department that does construction, does minor repetitive construction and repair work, job order contracting can certainly be applicable. There are a number of clients that Gordian has that utilize job order contracting. There are dozens in California, hundreds throughout the United States. As I mentioned, we're not early participants into this game. We're small. Most of the agencies on here are medium and larger sized, but there's a real opportunity for Calaveras County to take advantage of this program. And just highlighting a few of these, Stanislaus and San Joaquin, immediate neighbors to us, have been utilizing this for years and utilizing it successfully. I want to share a story with Contra Costa County, not much similar except for the first letters of our names, but they primarily use this for facility projects. And a lot of the projects they use it for are the same ones we've talked about as part of the board and as part of staff. Things like remodeling and roofing projects, HVAC projects, minor electrical work. These are all things that we're looking at to deliver here in the future, and this could really greatly expedite our opportunities. There are a lot of benefits to this. I'll highlight a few in yellow. We think there's an opportunity to improve work quality. Through that iterative process, contractors are involved in the decision-making process during design. It creates a sense of buy-in. The prices are guaranteed, so there's not a lot of advantage of trying to utilize change orders or claims to increase pricing. In addition, there's the promise of more work through the successful existing work in the program. So there's a motivation for the contractor to continue to perform good work. So I think the quality of work, in addition to the other advantages, is high. I also think the opportunity for local subcontractor participation. A lot of the projects we talked about in the previous slides are really small, and they're not conducive for having large, agencies from Sacramento or LA or San Francisco coming in and doing the work. Our bigger projects, our bridges, specialty work like that, yeah, there may not be as many local contractors, but there's a lot of contractor support and opportunities here locally in Calaveras County that can provide some of that work, and this is an avenue for them to do that. So again, through the small repetitive projects, again, a real good opportunity for local contractors to provide services here in Calaveras County. Now, the Gordian Group contract is what we're proposing. It's really the first step in a job order contracting program. It's an amount not to exceed $600,000, as I previously mentioned. We are utilizing Sourcewell. Sourcewell is kind of a national version of public contracting, so they go out, actually do the procurement process, identify consultants, and then as a partner with Sourcewell, we can utilize those in lieu of our own process. Gordian, as I mentioned, is already on for all of those other counties I identified. They are the main game in town. They know what they're doing. They've been very successful. Again, to throw another curveball at the county, something that I'm excited about, but just a little different than what we were used to in the past, is Gordian doesn't get paid for preparing all these documents. They prepare the price book, they assemble the documents, they assist in our bidding process, education of contractors. They don't get paid for that. Instead, they get paid a user fee or a surcharge when we deliver projects on a project-by-project basis, and that's a shade over 5%. For me, that's attractive, because if for a lot of our bigger projects, we do a big, huge design project, and if the scope gets too big, or if the design costs get too big, I'm stuck with a set of plans I spent a lot of money for and no way to build. If the plans are great or the plans are borderline, the contractor gets their money, or the designer gets their money. Here, Gordian's motivated to do the job successfully. And so, in addition, when I look at that fee and I see the cost I spend in administrative time and also formally designing projects that don't really need a formal design, our costs are generally higher than that 5%. So there's some cost savings there with this process. What we're proposing, as I mentioned, the risk is, at this point, is entirely on Gordian until we start delivering projects. The contract we're proposing runs through 2022. We are recommending 2 additional renewals by the Board of Supervisors. That would be at your discretion, and those would be annual for a maximum 5-year period. Looking at some of the potential cost savings just on the public works side, over the next 2 or 3 years, I've identified on our ledger a shade less than $18 million of work that could be utilized through job order contracting. That's a minimum. Based on my costs and my estimates, I think that I could save upwards of $900,000 through using job order contracting as compared to formal bidding. That money can then be reinvested into other projects or into construction, where the money really belongs, into the actual work and the boots in the ground, not in the soft costs and the indirect costs that don't bring a lot of value to a project. There are additional cost savings that I believe through improved processes, reduced change orders, the improved relationship that builds trust and camaraderie. And this is scalable. So if facilities uses it, or the airport, or integrated waste management, the more it's used, the more potential savings could occur. So a couple of slides. I appreciate your patience right now. So right now, the next steps would be Gordian would prepare a unit price book if the board approves this. We would then also engage with stakeholder and contractor feedback. We've reached out to a couple of the contractors locally. They are familiar and aware of job order contracting. They haven't used it a lot, but they have done a few projects under the job order contracting with other counties. And so we would look to reach out to as many contractors as possible, engage them, educate them about the process and the opportunities that they may have coming. Once that happens, we would finalize the package, bring it to you for approval. If the board approves that, we would go out to bid to identify contractors through the traditional low bid process. Ideally, a lot of agencies use multiple contractors. If you have one and they're not responsive, or they can't deliver in a timely manner, that can be a trouble with job order contracting and put us back to where we're at now. So a lot of agencies do 2 or 3. We would look for you on direction on that. But ultimately, ask for the board to approve that. And then we would issue job orders on an as-needed basis. The projects included would be projects that you've approved through the budgetary process, through the operating budget, the public works and facilities capital improvement programs. Anything that's not included in that would not be eligible for JOC. They would have to come to you through a budget amendment and process to approve that. Ultimately, we would come back to you annually to approve contractors. So there's multiple opportunities for the board to engage in job order contracting to check in to make sure that it's working according to your expectations. And ultimately, if all goes according to plan, I'd hope to have this in place by early 2020, taking advantage of the heavy construction season, not only for public works, but for facilities and others. So in summary, I've been doing this for a while. I don't get excited about a lot of things these days. This is one of the most exciting things I've worked on in the last decade. The opportunity to be able to deliver projects quickly, to deliver projects meeting or exceeding your expectations and the public's expectations. is something that's really attractive to me and to our department. It's designed to deliver quickly and efficiently. I think at the same time, we're not sacrificing the requirements we have for mutter and public contract law. We notice that this is a county-wide solution, even though Public Works is bringing this forward. Looking at this as a whole, the county as a whole can take advantage of this. And so why not take advantage of that, provide that opportunity, and then the individual departments, it's up to them to utilize this as they see fit. There's no upfront risk to the county, and then ultimately we're asking Gordian to provide a turnkey solution for us moving forward, if successful, for many years to come. So I imagine there's some questions. I appreciate your patience very much, and at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions. If there are technical questions, I believe there are members of Gordian in the audience, so if you have questions about their expertise in particular, they're available. With that, I'll open it up to any questions the board may have.
Supervisor Mills, your light was on first.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Are you going to be billing their 5%, a little bit over 5% out in your professional services budget, or would it be included in the overall contract?
Yeah, so Supervisor Mills, so the 5% would be, we would have the contract was $600,000, and so as these projects were bid, for example, Oberns Ferry, let's say we were delivering the Oberns Ferry project with this, and let's say the contract came out as $500,000. So the 5% would be $25,000. So we would issue a payment to Gordian in the amount of $25,000 utilizing the budget of the Oberns Ferry Bridge project. So the individual projects would be paying for those pro rata shares of the Gordian costs. So yeah, we're not using overhead professional services. This resides exactly with the projects that they're intended to deliver.
Thank you. Just for clarity.
Yeah.
How often is the book going to be revised?
The goal is annually. So this needs to be a regular update. Part of Gordian's expectation is this is done annually. And so especially if we're going out to bid annually, construction costs, especially with folks on the dais who are familiar with the construction field and the construction industry, prices have been all over the place in recent years. In particular, on the public works side, we've seen with the passage of SB 1, and the stabilization of the gas tax, we've seen a lot of agencies aggressively pursue projects, which has really driven up project costs. And so the need to go out and do this regularly with the local community, and it's not just prices from, we're not taking off-the-shelf prices from San Francisco or LA. These are local prices from local contractors, local suppliers, and vendors. So we have a really good pulse on what the actual prices are here in Calaveras, not a representative price in Sacramento.
So when you look at each project, and every time it touches somebody's hands in a folder or a file of some type, there's a cost involved in that. So I really do support the whole idea of pushing this into a quicker time frame, because it's going to reduce the number of people handling and the number of times they handle a specific project. So that's a critical element here. How are we going to deal with CEQA? Is there going to be any delays because of CEQA or NEPA?
Yeah, most of the projects, Supervisor Mills, fall under the categorical exemption for CEQA. So this really isn't designed for projects that trigger EIRs or negative declarations. I mean, theoretically it could, but again, this is meant for small, minor, repetitive in nature. Those projects have exemptions in CEQA. And so in reality, like for example, myself, we issue categorical exemptions before each construction season for all of our routine and repetitive projects. So those projects, CEQA would have little to no impact on that.
So you'll be able to divide them out and keep this just to the local repetitive.
Absolutely. And this is prohibited by that. So the code that I provided earlier, the code actually prohibits brand new construction. So small stuff is okay, but you're not like bridge projects or wagon trail. A brand new, if we were building Superior Court, for example, this would not be applicable. So as a matter of fact, it's usually the upper cap's a couple of $1 million or so. Actually, code, I think it's 3 or 3.5 inflated with inflation. So you're not doing $15, $20 million projects with this. We're really looking at, in the $20,000 to a few $100,000 range or a little bit more. I mean, road maintenance stuff would certainly be included, but the idea is, like you said, repetitive, minor in nature, straightforward. You don't need a 500-page book to do a resurfacing job. You can really do it with some good folks on the ground who know what they're doing.
I did talk to some other outside government purchasing agents, and this is something that they have seen happen too, and are very supportive of it. So I don't see any downsides to it. Thank you.
The questions from the board. Supervisor Callaway?
On the, kind of following up with Supervisor Mills, on unit pricing, I mean, we had a project up in Arnold where the bid came in higher than the county's estimate due to several factors that changed the cost of the pricing. So if we approve a unit price of X amount, but bids are coming in at X plus or X plus plus, how is that managed?
Yeah, so the contractors, when we approve a unit bid price supervisor, Callaway, that price is good for the length of the contract, so for an entire year. So when they bid, like for example, let's use Murphy's Drive as an example. If they already have pre-approved pricing that they've agreed to and the county's agreed to, when they go out and do the scoping for the Murphy's Drive project, if there have been fluctuations within the last 3 or 4 months, this is immune to that. So they're locked into the pricing that they've agreed to. So,
They being the
they being the contractor. So the contractor's locked. So you're not bidding individual Murphy's Drive projects. You're meeting in the field to agree to a price, but they've already agreed on whether it's asphalt or concrete or additional rock or whatever. They've agreed to those prices, how much those are going to cost.
To the price, but not to the labor?
No, the labor's included in that.
So if I am Emerson, and today did it, and the contract goes out in 4 months, and I'm paying more for the asphalt or whatever for my labor, can I just say, I'm not going to bid on that because I've got 5 other people that want my services?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, they would be prohibited. Again, we're talking small jobs. I'm not planning to go do $3 million, $2 million jobs with them.
Right,
it's really small, repetitive. The disadvantage to saying no is you're not going to get any more projects. So if you say, I'm not going to do that for the whatever, 50, 60, 70,000 or however much it is, then you're not going to be able to move forward. So, I mean, we're not forcing them to do it. And we have other options. So we'll have 2 or 3 different contractors to go to with the pre-approved pricing. So in reality, that's another reason, back to Supervisor Mills, why we need to update the unit price book regularly, because prices do change. And it doesn't make sense to change them. The amount of effort that it takes to update it makes this an annual process. Trying to do that 2 or 3 times a year would be an extreme labor intensive with probably not a lot of value. But that is the risk that the contractors run when they initially bid on a project. They have to build that in over what the prices could go over the next 8-9 months and build that into their cost.
One of the problems we've had with getting local contractors, which we all support, Emerson being an exception, is the insurance requirements they have. So those insurance requirements are still there for local contractors to bid on this system?
Yeah, so the local insurance requirements are still applicable. Prevailing wage law is still required. We don't get out of those requirements. However, usually with job order contracting, there's a minimum amount of guaranteed work. So when local contractors bid on big projects, one of the disadvantages they have is they could do a lot of effort and time bidding on a project without the knowledge or expertise of prevailing wage, of local public contract law, insurance requirements, and then have no guarantee that even being selected for the work. By being selected for this, part of this is a minimum guaranteed amount of work. A lot of agencies used $50,000 or $25,000 as a point in work from there. So there's a vested interest in getting involved with that. Also, as a subcontractor, there's a lot more opportunities for subcontracting. And so you'll be, instead of maybe not necessarily you're comfortable in being a prime contractor, but you may be more comfortable being a subcontractor working under the prime, where the prime's responsible for that sort of stuff. And that could be a bigger agency. There's a lot of job order contracting groups who sub out 90% of their work in the job order contract to local contractors. And they only do one small little niche of work. And so there's another opportunity to get local contractors involved. If we're doing $20,000 of computer cabling throughout they're not going to call Sacramento, the costs alone are ridiculous. So they're going to look for local subs to provide that service at the prices they've agreed to. So that's another avenue why I think, local contractors, while still adhering to public contract law and being fair and impartial, there's a really good advantage for local contractors to get involved. And I don't think, prevailing wage law can be a little scary. When folks get into it, I think it's a little more straightforward than they anticipate, but the initial specter of it can be scary. So this gives them multiple opportunities and a little bit of cost guarantee as well.
What about projects as it relates to FEMA, where we're looking to get funding back?
That is a fantastic question. I'm glad to answer it because I spent a lot of work finding the answer to that before I came, and I did not prime you with that question, Supervisor Callaway. So right now, the federal government approves this, a lot of different agencies, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, the Army. So the two we deal with primarily are FEMA and FHWA. So FEMA right now does not allow job order contracting. So we can't use this process for big FEMA repair jobs. Now, I will argue that some of the work that we've done, for example, Murphy's Drive. Murphy's Drive is a FEMA job. The amount of time and effort that it would have taken with local dollars to fix at the time and get it done then versus 2.5 years later, the amount of staff and effort of unrecoverable expenses, we've probably spent more on unrecoverable expenses in 2.5 years than it would have taken just to fix the job then. And I also think there is some avenues to get reimbursement through FEMA. So that would be my argument. For the really big FEMA jobs, like for example, I think it's Whiskey Slide in 26. There's a pretty big slide out there from the 2019 storms. That one would need to be delivered through traditional processes. But there's an advantage for FEMA to look for the small stuff. Sometimes it makes more sense just to do it ourselves. And this gives us an opportunity to do it quickly and actually probably save money without involving the federal bureaucracy. Now, FHWA is different. They've been testing that over the last couple of years. They just issued an order in early 2019 that approved job order contracting. So it's new. Anytime you're dealing with Caltrans and FHWA on newly adopted things, there's a little bit of a struggle. But ideally, under the new code that FHWA approved, we are allowed to use job order contracting.
So the one you showed that was with Calaveras, San Joaquin, the dip in the road?
Yeah, so under my impression, I don't know the specifics of that. That costs were, I think they came in at $270,000. I know they came in under budget. That one's a one-off. It's probably not a good example because it was also a project in the federal bridge program. And so I think they got some reimbursements through that. I know not a lot of agencies have been testing the waters with FEMA. And again, it's a case-by-case basis. So to me, it gives me a tool. Right now, I don't have a lot of tools available if I see something that I need to respond quickly to, especially on the guise of emergency. If it's something that's absolutely obvious, people are going to, our lives are at stake, very easy decision to make for me. Those gray areas where, okay, is it okay? I need to do this, but it's going to be okay for 4 or 5 months. Those are the ones where we're really stuck. And then by following the formal contracting procedures, it could take a lot longer than what the public expects. So this gives me that tool where we can make those educated decisions. Okay, we're going to move forward with this. And if we don't get reimbursement, we have to pay $30,000, $40,000 now. But we solve the problem now. We solve the public issue now. And we're likely saving money in the long run than having to try and recoup expenses that may not be recoverable years down the road.
Okay, I have 2 more
Yeah.
questions. You say the design build process is a slower process.
Mm-hmm.
Could you not package design bid build the same way you do this?
So, no, not really. Each one's a standalone project, so they all have to be delivered separately.
Okay. So this company, you come up with the projects and give it to them, and they do the shopping list of things that you showed me that they showed us that they do?
Yeah, so we essentially, we've already done that. We've had preliminary meetings, and their scope of service is included in the contract today. And so based on direction from you, they're going to go out to the contracting community, vendors, suppliers. They know our projects. They have the list of facilities. They also have experience from neighboring counties, so they know what San Joaquin's asked for and Stanislaus has asked for. So they have a ton of experience knowing the items that are necessary that will be eligible. And they have our list of projects. So they'll go through that, they know all the items, and they'll get pricing for each one of those items that will likely come up as part of our big book. And so, yeah, as soon as they're familiar with our projects, what we're doing here is not dissimilar than what other counties do. Other counties have aging facilities, other counties have aging roads, fairly similar, older, antiquated HVAC systems. And so, yeah, they have a ton of experience doing that. They know who to reach out to and what items include in the unit price.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stopper.
With job order contracting, this will free up some of your staff's time to concentrate on the bigger projects and everything, so that, so when it goes to a design bid build, you may have more time to be able to locate your staff to work forward on those. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it's not just design staff, because
Right.
it's my administrative staff, it's my road maintenance staff. One of the things that this could be used for is for minor road maintenance jobs. So on the ebbs and flows of construction, especially this winter where we had 31 straight days of 24-hour shifts, if I have a localized spot where we're just, we're trying to keep up with demand and I have other spots we just can't get to, we can quickly issue a job order and have a contractor help support. So one of the best things about it is we have a steady flat line of staff and our actual workload does this. And so this gives me another tool to deal with this.
Right.
And so the public's not seeing that backlog and delay of delivering projects. They're seeing us do it, and we have those tools in our toolbox to deliver those. So, yeah, the staff savings are significant, and it's not just engineering and design staff. It's all across the Public Works Board.
It doesn't go towards snow removal, does it?
It does not go towards snow removal. That's a great question. And I know. I do want to highlight, again, I want to highlight that I've said Public Works a couple times. This is really a county option.
Right.
You're getting the lens of Public Works. But in reality, if we have, for example, the museum that had the water leaks during the storm, having a job order contract could come in and quickly do those repairs and get that locked up before more substantial issues happen. So this is a tool that can be used countywide and help save staff.
Okay, with this bid package that you're putting together, like, let's say there's 10 items, like your example. So you're talking about having 2 to 3 contractors. Will they all be on the same bid package?
Yeah, so...
and how do they all come to that same number?
So they are identified by the low bid, and so we go out and we bid the same package, and they all bid on it, and they provide various multipliers. And so it'll be the lowest 2 or 3. Now, one may be a multiplier of 1.1, and one might be 1.11, and one might be 1.12. So we are identifying the 3 lowest. We'll bring that to the board for approval, knowing that that's part of the risk of bidding is you may have, your bid may be very slightly lower, a fraction of a percentage lower than someone else's. And the board would ultimately approve that. And we would, with these small repetitive jobs, we may choose contractor C, who has a very slightly higher multiplier than contractor A. When we look at the nuts and bolts of things with small repetitive jobs, those fraction of percentage turn into such a small amount of money that it turns into a tiny percentage of what we're talking about. And so, yeah, it's part of the contracting procedures. Again, trying to hold, using public contract law, maybe you take the low bid and you say, okay, who else wants to do it? That's bid shopping. That's not allowed in the public contract code. But by identifying the lowest 2 or 3, they're all qualified. We do that clearly in the bid process, so the contractors know we're identifying the lowest 2 or lowest 3 bidders, and they know with confidence that if they're the 3rd lowest bidder, they're going to be involved in the process. The risk you run is if you're the 4th lowest bidder, you're not going to be included. So it's that, again, upholding that fair and impartial process while still trying to provide that flexibility.
Thank you, sir.
So,
I got a couple questions.
Gary, go ahead.
So using this form, how are change orders handled?
So, great question. In reality, change orders go away or greatly minimized because when we're out there with the contractor, you're identifying the scope of work and the deliverables within, you're all agreeing to the same package, you're seeing the same things, so you're greatly reducing it. Now, when a change order does come up, and that you're in the construction field, things happen, so the contractor, us, and Gordian Group all meet, talk about what the changes. For example, let's say you ended up using 100 more tons of concrete than you anticipated. So you have a pre-approved price point and pre-approved per ton of concrete. So once you all agree on the quantities, the contractor gets paid on the pre-approved pricing. So in reality, the contractor is no longer risking potentially taking a risk on both sides. The contractor's not taking a risk by maybe under quantifying the quantities and then having to eat that cost. At the same time, we're not overpaying for something that's actually not being delivered. For example, maybe we thought there was a lump sum and we thought it was 200 tons, there was really only 100 tons. They get paid extra for concrete they didn't provide. So in reality, that's how it's handled in the field collaboratively with pre-approved prices. There's no negotiation, there's no haggling, just in the actual quantities. And so once we agree on the quantities, the price is already set.
So let's say you threw Murphy's Road up there, and basically, to me, that's going to end up being new construction because repair is something you use existing. Looks like everything's going to go away completely. You're going to end up completely with the bed, the stream bed, and you're going to start over. So what happens if we go out to bid this way for that process, and they go in after everybody's come out and agreed this and that and this and everything, and this is part of the bid package of everything you need, give us a price for it. They go out there and they start construction, and they run into a problem with having to blast some rocks out of the way or boulders out of the way, and they run up against something that's not on the list anywhere in the book that's been put together. There's no pricing anywhere in the book for this type of what happens with that?
Great question. So that does happen in even the most comprehensive of books. You're not going to have every single thing. So as part of the bid process, we identify a universal multiplier. So what the contractor does is he goes and gets 3 competitive prices for that work. For example, blasting, he gets 3 prices. The lowest price is the bid we're used, and we also agree on a multiplier for that. 10% is a commonly accepted practice in job order contracting. For the administrative costs for the contractor. So he goes out and gets 3 bids. The lowest bid, there's a 10% markup, and that's the cost of the work. And so that's how it's done. And so it's clearly identified. And it happens, no matter how comprehensive your book is, you run into things once in a while. And we're talking tens of thousands of items. Every once in a while you run into items. The goal is to limit our work to what's in the book. So and this is where some agencies go off the rails once in a while with this, is they'll have their unit price book that identifies these things, and then they decide they want to go use it to build this, and that's where they get in trouble. This is really focused only on the projects that are in our operating budget that you've identified through the capital improvement programs for facilities and public works. And even with those individual items, it's clearly identified in the contract how those are priced out, usually through multiple competitive bids by other contractors.
So given that scenario, and there is a $100,000 change order, does Gordian get part of that change order?
So they would have it's under the price of the job order submitted, so theoretically they would have a 5%. So if it was a $100,000 process, they would get a $5,000 fee. Now, Gordian's part of that process, so part of the service they provide is the coordination with that job order. So they review that, they provide feedback, make sure it's accurate. So there's value in that as well with them being involved.
And the next question I have is, the county is still project manager for each project?
Yes. Under this, the county is still project manager. Gordian does provide inspection services as an option. It's another 5%. I don't anticipate using that. We have other contracts we have 2 public works inspectors that can provide that service. We also have on-call contracts with subs. Most of this stuff is going to be handled through county staff or our on-call list. I don't see us using Gordian. They are out of town. Most of the smaller repetitive jobs, and they're small, quick duration, that's the sort of stuff that our public works staff can handle.
In the contract for a particular project is still with the county?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so the contract that the contractors go into is with the county, and the Gordian contract's with the county.
So if we award a contract to a contractor, and the insurance requirements for the project, are they required to hold Gordian harmless too as part of their contract insurance requirements?
Yes.
Or is that a separate thing between Gordian and the contractor?
It's, so we have, and I'll try to answer your question if we get, let me back up. So we have the contract with the county to indemnify and hold harmless. And so that's the relationship between us and the contractor. Gordian and us also have the services contract. So in reality, when Gordian's acting, they're acting as our agent along with us representing the county's interests. So no, the contract's really between us and the contractor, and we're the direct, we work directly with them. Now, Gordian helps review the quantities and provide assistance with that, but when we issue job orders and change orders related to the job orders, that's done through the county. That's not done through Gordian. So that relationship's directly between the county and the contractor.
Okay. I just have a little concerns there, but that's all the questions I had.
Thank you. If there are no further questions from the board, I'll open this up for public comment. Al?
Wow, a lot of information there. Also, a lot of good questions from the board. This seems like a really good thing for the taxpayer. We're looking at maybe a 30% savings in costs and having a better results. One of the things in contracting, if there's risk involved, you pay more. So by unit pricing, you reduce the risk quite a bit. One of the areas of risk would be the cost of fuel or asphalt. These can vary quite a bit. And well drillers are really familiar with that because they use a lot of fuel when they're drilling in the drilling process. So it seems like one of the contracts could, especially the contracts over a long period of time. We're talking about 3 years, $600,000 budget. And then we talked about maybe 8 or 9 months for maybe a rebidding. It would seem like a factor could be put in a unit price that on the cost of fuel or asphalt. And that could even reduce the expense further because there'd be less risk. If the price of fuel goes up, you don't need a change order for that. It's already covered. Thank you.
Will?
I'm Will Moore in Rancho Calaveras. And what I'm seeing here is a kind of situation of dependency. You're putting the county dependent on this outside service, and then the county no longer has the in-house skills to do this project. Then you're stuck with it forever. It's kind of, I don't know if that's an objection or not. It's just a point. Thank
you. Is there other public comment on this item? I'll bring it back. Josh, any final things you want to add?
I'd love to address a couple of those. First of all, one thing that's unique with the unit price book is it builds in things like fuel and trucking costs per mile into the contract. So recognizing that a project in Valley Springs or West Point is different than a project in Dorrington. And so part of that is built into the process, realizing that it costs a little more to deliver projects in rural, secluded areas than they do in maybe places a little closer to urban cores. So this project, the unit price book will reflect those costs and fluctuations. And again, trying to project accurate and bids. And regarding to skills, so we don't have the expertise right now to be able to collect that unit price book information. And similar to a lot of the projects we deliver, we rely on consultant services to do that, bridges and buildings. What we're trying to do is try and save some of our administrative time and effort while still beholding to the public by being the owner of this, much like our other bridge projects or et cetera. the consultants are providing kind of the nuts and bolts while we'll still do the administrative. It's very similar to the model we're using now. So I don't see any loss of admin skills or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I see this freeing us up to be able to deliver more things than having to kind of be doing the same repetitive administrative process over again with little added value. So yeah, so that's my response to both of those. And again, I think the one thing I want to highlight is this is the first step. There's going to be some public outreach. The next item would be bringing to the board the contracts for going out to bid for the contractor side of things. So there'll be additional opportunities for the board to review those packages. And I know there were some questions I probably didn't perfectly answer today, but I think those processes can be further clarified with board direction at the time we bring those to the board for your authorization to advertise.
Thank you very much. All right. Is there further discussion or a motion from this board?
I would move the item.
Moved by Supervisor Mills. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. 5-0.
Thank you.
Go to work.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, Chapters Government Code Section 53232.3D, board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there have been expense reimbursement, mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also at the board member's discretion include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
Thank you. We'd like to begin. Supervisor Mills, your light was on.
I can get at it. We had some conversation with FERC in Washington, D.C. As you know, Lake Tulloch is a FERC-operated reservoir, and it was kind of an aha moment that they discussed that there are only 3 elements that they're requiring, recreation being one of those, and how that all is done is up to the individual agency. So I went to Strawberry to the Tri-Dam meeting here last week as they were discussing the modifications to the dock ordinances so they can continue to meet the goals of the shoreline management plan. It's just really interesting how they're willing to possibly divert the dock ordinances over to the counties, as they've done in Tuolumne County to Calaveras. They're getting a little bit frustrated with the amount of additional work that's requiring. They're a public power agency. They're built to handle power, not play in the recreational world. So there's an ongoing conversation with them, and I'm looking forward to how that will work out. Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater Basin Authority, there's going to be a plan presented to this board to be adopted in November, to be presented to the state in January, that revolves around the water budget. There are 4 CASJAM wells. Those are groundwater elevation monitoring wells, 2 in Stan, 2 in Calaveras County, that will be used. But we need to be looking as a board as how do we restructure the GSA as we move from planning to monitoring, because there's going to be a quarterly reporting process that we're going to need to be involved in, and we need to talk more seriously about budgeting future costs to handle our portion of the responsibility for the Eastside GSA. So that's to be a future discussion, hopefully in November. That's all I have.
Thank you. Supervisor Stopper?
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Toffenelli?
I have nothing to report at this time.
Supervisor Callaway?
Nothing to report.
I have nothing to report either.
Jeez, guys.
Mr. Alt, do you have anything you'd like to discuss?
No, I do not.
Madam Counsel? Madam Clerk? Thank you. With no further ado, this meeting stands adjourned.